If you are listening to this podcast, it means you're searching for someone who understands you, someone who gets you. You are yearning to be understood and to belong. Welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, where we help smart, talented, and sensitive people navigate an often insensitive world. I am Dianne Allen, your host. My roles as ambassador, author, speaker, and intuitive mentor for bright and talented people are woven into each episode. I have the experience and knowledge to educate and inspire, as I have been there and I understand your unique intensities, sensitivities, and challenges. Welcome. Emotional intelligence when you have ADHD. Hey friends, it's Dianne here. Well, Dianne and Carol here. We're hanging out at Carol Gill's house here in Florida. And we started talking about emotional intelligence and gifted ADHD people. So we're going to record our conversation so you guys can kind of listen in, because emotional intelligence is Carol's thing and ADHD and gifted people are my thing, but they overlap in so many different ways. So I hope you appreciate our conversation like we do.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, and this is going to be a lot of fun because emotional intelligence really is my thing. I think that if the world could just become a little bit more self-aware of what they do on a regular basis and how what they do impacts other people, it would be a much better place.
That's so true. So this is the thing I was thinking about lately about it. In fact, when I was driving down here, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how so many people who are gifted or have ADHD or whatever want to be emotionally intelligent. They can understand the intellectual concepts of what it means. Been there, done that. They've read the book. They understand. Yet sometimes that self-awareness piece eludes them.
Exactly.
Well, it eludes people like me because I have the same thing. But sometimes it's like I know it, but I'm not totally in it. So do you see that? Because you work with a lot of people who are gifted, even though they may not call themselves gifted.
Yeah, and I do see that. I do see that a lot. And I think, a lot of times, yes, they intellectually understand emotional intelligence is about understanding what you're feeling and what your reactions to those feelings are. The challenge, I think, sometimes is that they don't really address the feeling aspect of it. They have the logic behind it, but they're not really thinking about it. So you're driving down the road, somebody pulls out in front of you, you have to slam on brakes. There's an emotional trigger that happens with that. And so when we talk about self-awareness, it's really saying, okay, right now I'm angry and I'm frustrated. So what's happening to me physiologically? And that's the piece I think they miss, because they immediately go to wanting to fix it. But you have to recognize what you're feeling and how your body is responding, and then what your natural response is, before you can actually change the response to choose something different to do.
Yeah, that's so true, because I see people wrap their mind around it. Like, okay, I'm all upset because somebody pulled out in front of me and slammed on the brakes. Or like, I got really nervous coming down here a couple times because my dog was struggling with anxiety in the car. And it would have been really easy to just stay in my head and try to figure and think and wrap logic around it, which I did a little bit. But then it's like, okay, well, what's going on with the rest of me, in my soul and in my emotions and in my physiology, in order then to make a decision on how to move forward.
Exactly.
And it's so common. And I think it's over reinforced in this culture that those of us who are smart, we're over reinforced from the time we're very little to think through things,
right?
Figure
To fix
it out.
Yeah, figure it out and fix it.
And so what if it's not figure outable mentally, that it's all about bringing it together emotionally and spiritually and energetically?
Right. And it's really recognizing, first of all, the emotion, but then secondly, the physical aspect of that emotion and what's happening to you. And so when I talk about physiologically, your heart races, some people get a tightness in their stomach, your hands get tight, your face turns red. Some people get heated, but what's physically happening to you? And then what's your body telling you to do? And that's where, we talk about terrible things like road rage, but a lot of times what happens is the emotion takes over. So the emotion, the physiology, and boom, people do something that they typically wouldn't do. So it's being able to interrupt that pattern and say, stop, I'm recognizing what I'm feeling right now. I'm going to do something different, whether it's breathe through it or count to 10 or something that says, I'm not going to do what I've always done.
Right. I can make a different choice.
Yeah.
A different choice point in that moment.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's acknowledging and really paying attention to what's happening in that moment.
Right. And so paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many people aren't really paying attention until they're way down that rabbit hole and they're out of control?
Oh, yeah.
Or they're so shut down. It's like all or none. Gifted people, it's everything. I feel everything, or I feel nothing.
Nothing. Right.
And so it's about being able and being willing to recognize it. Now, I'd like to have your opinion on this, because I think about this one too. The social part, like interactions.
Right.
Like, I know that I have ADHD flavor, and I'm really gifted, and I'm really intense. Very intense. That's why the book Someone Gets Me is about intense sensitivities. It's because it's me.
Right.
And I know a lot of people like that, and we've been friends for like ever. So I can be my intense self around you, and it's safe.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times that intense self is difficult to be around with regular people. So how do you help somebody who maybe isn't as intense as those of us who are, understand emotional intelligence and that intensity? Like, maybe they're afraid of their own feelings, or they're afraid of their own intensity, so they shut it down. How do you help them make friends with that part of themselves so they can have relationships better?
That's a really good question. And, you know, each person is going to be a little bit different. But again, it's the awareness factor and the paying attention to what's happening to you right now. When you start feeling yourself shutting down, what's causing you to do that? What are the thoughts that you're having? What's the emotional trigger that's happening for you? And physically, what are you feeling? And being able to actually write those things down, to identify and name what's happening to you, is a big part of the process of overcoming or changing what you're doing. So many times we don't take the time to sit back and really think about, what am I feeling right now, and what is the impact it's having on me, but also on the people around me. A lot of times we don't go to that step of thinking about, how am I impacting the people around me? When I shut down, everybody else notices that. What is the signal I'm sending to them? So it's paying attention, being in the moment, and really trying to label what's happening for you, and then be able to say, going forward, I'm going to do something different when that happens the next time. So you're reflecting on what you felt, how it came through for you, and what you chose to do, and what you can choose to do differently.
Okay, so now I have another question. Thinking of all this stuff. This is fun. Because what do you think about teaching people to educate others about their own neurodiversity? Because I've started saying that, well, it's my gifted thing, or it's because I have an ADHD, it's executive functioning difference that makes it this way, so that it's not really an excuse, but it's more of an, here's how you can understand me better, because I just don't do the world the way regular people do the world.
Right. And I think it's important to say it just like you said it, because when you talk the big words, people don't know what they mean. Neurosensitivity, that kind of thing, I get it, but a lot of people won't know what that means. So it's a little intimidating. So I think, you know, and I do this too, I think it's important for us to say in a way that people can understand that we're hardwired differently. We see the world differently. We respond to things differently. And that doesn't make us wrong, and it doesn't make us better or worse. It just makes us different. And I'm a big proponent for accepting differences, because I think the world, like I said, would be a much better place if we could learn how to do that. You don't have to be like me, and I don't have to be like you. We can be us and still have a very effective relationship.
Yeah, it's kind of like our brain wants to tell us, and we've been trained this way, that everybody's the same and there's a few different people, but really no two people are the same. That's a delusion that we're all the same, because no two of us have the same autobiography, or the same neurology, or the same biology, or the same way of processing anything.
That's correct.
So everybody's really neurodiverse in its own way, even though that word is used for certain things. It's right. It's the way it is, right?
It is.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Because I've learned, I just start saying people, that's just the way I do it. You know, and I was talking to one of my new friends up in North Carolina, and I said, well, I have that ADHD flavor, and it's just the way my processing works, and where I can drill down into things, or I hyper focus on things. And because ADHD isn't about attention deficit at all, it's about having too much ability to have attention.
To focus into.
It's the wrong words. The medical system's not even using accuracy. But we won't
agree.
go down that conversation.
No.
Because that'll take this on another way. So, okay, I just find it very fascinating, the whole thing. And I'm thinking about that. What goes with all this, and I was thinking about this too on the way down, was about how all of us with our own little quirky differences manage to live in a world that is so flippin' overwhelming.
It really is. I'll tell you, for me, I had to stop doing certain things because the overwhelm was really getting to me. I can go down the rabbit hole really quickly. And so I stopped watching the news. Some people tell me that that's not a good thing, but I find out what I need to find out in ways that are more healthy for me. I don't watch the news on TV anymore at all. I do listen to some radio, and I pay attention. I go online and I'll find the information that I need. But that was overstimulation for me. And the negativity that is constant in our world right now can also be overwhelming, whether it's the news or it's just the interaction with people. There's a lot of negativity in our world right now. So finding ways to keep that harmony and sense of stay in the moment, control the things that I can control, and let go of the things that I have no control over. And it doesn't mean I'm apathetic. I want the world to be a better place. I don't want us to be in war, and I don't want a lot of the things to happen. But I also know that there are certain things that are really outside of my control. So if I dwell on those things, they take me down a very bad path. So I just don't. And I think people are learning more and more how to do that, and staying, whether you call it in the moment or mindful or whatever you want to call it, it's really focusing on what do I have control over and what can I influence, and letting go of the rest of the stuff, because it's too much.
Right. And then when we get overwhelmed, I know I do it. I shut down, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And then my light or my goodness or the desire I have for a better world takes a back seat because there's nothing left.
Exactly.
And so, like, I haven't watched the news in ages either. I can't remember last time I watched the news, and I never will again, I don't think. So, yeah, I think that overwhelm is a really big deal, because I think that those of us who have the sensitivity and ability to actually affect change and help people through it, there's parts of us that are done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just telling you a little while ago, we're sitting here and I'm like, 50 email newsletters I deleted because I was been put on people's list that I never asked for. I don't even know who most of them are. And then there's people from LinkedIn who will send me a message. I don't answer it because I don't want whatever they're trying to sell me. And then they keep re-messaging me to, quote, get me to the top of your list,
right,
which will guarantee you to be
that
at the
I
bottom.
will never ever reach out to you. I hate that too.
Right. And it takes the fun out of things, like we were talking about. I'm looking to get a new floor in my house and I want to do that, but I don't want to call anybody because I don't want to be overwhelmed, bombarded with text messages, emails, blah, 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 and crooked salespeople. I don't want to do it. So it takes the fun out of some of the things that life could be fun.
Exactly.
And I'm tired of it. I'm really tired. And I think that there is a level of exhaustion with those of us who are intensely sensitive and aware. So what do you do? What do you do to take care of yourself and keep your energy charged up?
Well, I love the outdoors, and I have a beautiful little patio. It's not big and it's nothing fancy, but it has lots of plants, and it's my happy place. So I spend a lot of time in quiet, just quiet, or music. I love music, all kinds of music. And other things that I do, I'm a water person, so I love the beach. I love the sand. It's very healing for me. It's how I get back to center. And so when I'm traveling a lot, which I've been doing recently, my favorite thing to do is just to chill and do nothing. I do read a lot, and I love to spend time with family and friends, but it's the quiet time that re-energizes me for the most part.
Yeah, me too. I have to have quiet, and I like to be outside, but I have to have quiet. Yeah. I have to have a time and a place regularly where there's quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that
I was listening to some podcasts on the way down here, and several of the different topics, it didn't matter the topics they were talking about, but it all comes down to, everybody kept looping around to the same idea, is that things are in such overwhelm and the world is so loud in our ears, like bright blue lights on our phones and blue lights on the TV, and then the loud volume, and the commercials are louder than the other things. And all of the demand on our attention. And it's not just mental attention, it's the energy, right?
Right.
That everybody kept coming back to. You have to have stillness and quiet. Turn it all off an hour before you go to bed.
Right.
Because it's just more than our neurology and our natural way is designed to deal with.
Absolutely agree. The other thing that I do is I try to turn my phone off on silent. I just turn it on silent so it's not dinging at me all day long. For a long time, I didn't do that because I was afraid I might miss something, right? I might miss a client or I might miss something that's fun. But the bottom line is, if I shut my phone off for a couple of hours, I don't miss it. And it gives me the opportunity to actually focus and get things done. So I have started doing that on a regular basis.
That's really smart. I know I've turned off a lot of the notifications for things because the constant dinging.
Yeah,
and
I can't stand it.
By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like beside myself, overwhelmed. Just, I can't take it anymore.
Right. So I don't do it. I turn it off when I get, when I get up in the morning. I look at everything and I turn it off until noontime, and then I turn it on and I see what's going on and if there's anything that I need to take care of. But it helps me stay centered and stay focused and not feel so scattered, because it's easy to get pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
And I think that's all about knowing yourself and being in that space of saying, I know when I'm good and I know when I'm not good, and I know the things that trigger me to go down a path that isn't healthy for me. So self-awareness, it's really about knowing you, understanding you, knowing how you function, and then making better choices. It's not changing who you are, it's changing what you're doing with who you are.
Yeah. And it empowers yourself. That way you can stand in your own sovereignty.
Absolutely.
You're not trying to be somebody you're not.
Right.
Or you're not trying to be like a clone like everyone else.
Right.
And on the other side, don't get to use your difference as an excuse.
That is very true. Yes. And I don't allow people to do that with me either.
I had somebody just, I don't know, a few months ago say, well, I'm gifted. That's why I have all these troubles. I said, oh, no.
No.
Yes, you are gifted. And yes, you do have those kinds of unique challenges that only gifted people have. And it's only 1.5% of the population. I get all that. And it is not a convenient excuse to do poorly and to beat yourself up or harm yourself or others in any form.
Right.
It's not.
It just means you need to think about it and make a different choice.
Right. Because it's not, even our greatest asset, there are also parts of that asset that can be tricky to navigate, right?
Any strength we have, if we overuse it, becomes a weakness, right?
Yep.
So, if you're really good at a certain thing and you do that all the time, it actually does become a weakness because you're losing out on so many other opportunities. So,
it's like the volume gets turned up so loud that then it starts hurting.
Absolutely.
When you go too far into it.
Yeah, absolutely
crazy.
True.
I love it. That's hysterical.
Yep.
That's true. I love it. Yeah, I think it's just so important. So what do you think about ways that the regular person who's not a coach or not somebody like us who's out there trying really to help people wake up?
Mm-hmm.
What can regular people do that maybe have like an IT job, or they're a server, or they're an artist, or they're something different, and how can they be a positive influence in the world in their own way without having to be a coach or having to go to school or
There are so many ways, Diane, and I think the first thing that pops into my mind, well, there's two things that popped in right at the same time. First is listen to understand. I think our world has lost the ability to listen truly to people, just to understand and not to agree or disagree or prove right or prove wrong. It's just listen to people. People want to be heard.
Yeah.
And we don't have to agree with what they're saying, but we can listen and we can understand. And it's okay to do that. And so I think just in general, every person on this planet can improve their listening abilities. The other thing that goes along with listening is empathize. Learn how to see things from other people's points of view. Again, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about understanding. It's about saying, wow, I never thought of it that way. I don't have to think you're right or wrong. I can just accept you. And so for me, that's the passion that I have, is I want people to truly pay attention to each other and accept people just for who they are, without feeling like it's your job to change them or fix them or make them something they aren't, or to be just like you. You know, I can't imagine a world where everybody was just like me. I think I would go crazy.
Totally boring.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. So those to me are the two things that everybody can do. And they're keys, again, to building emotional intelligence.
Right. The listening piece. I'm really glad you said that, because it's listening to understand, not listening to say the next thing. Like most people, when you're talking to them,
they're waiting for their turn to talk.
They're planning their speech.
Absolutely. They're not listening.
I call that sequential monologues.
Yeah.
Like, they're not really listening.
Yeah. Cubby called it the dialogue of the deaf.
Right.
Because you're just talking over each other.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So it really is true. And I see it happening a lot with the people that I interact with. And, I work with some very senior level people who are very highly intelligent and who kind of have a tendency to not necessarily treat people the way they should, with a lot of respect. It's more command and control kind of things. And when I ask them, I do feedback, and I ask them, have you never gotten this feedback before, that people think you're a bully, or they think you're, not easy to talk to, or you're not approachable? And they tell me, yeah, they've gotten the feedback before. And I say, well, why haven't you changed it? Why haven't you done something different? And most of the time, the answer, and it's a sad answer, is I don't know how. I don't know how.
Yeah.
And the key to that message is they really don't, because, again, they're hardwired differently. So that empathy piece is usually lacking. And it's one of those keys to being effective with other people. But how do you teach empathy? You have to experience empathy to teach it. Right? To learn empathy, you have to experience empathy.
To even know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I can remember doing this activity years and years ago. It's like teaching people balance. How do you teach somebody to balance who's never balanced before? Right. You put them on a bike and you say balance, and guess what happens?
They fall over.
They fall over. But once they've gotten to a place where they truly can get their body centered and truly balance, and they feel it, then they know. That's exactly what you have to do for people who don't know how to empathize.
Right. So a lot of people that have ADHD, whether that's diagnosed or not, or gifted people that are extremely intense and sensitive, right, have a difficult time sometimes with empathy, or with even being able to understand what some of these things are.
Yes.
Because of the high amount of having to accommodate the world up until they figured out what it was. And then I always try to tell people, make friends with yourself.
Yeah.
That the way you do it. So like I'll say, oh, that's my ADHD self, or that's my gifted self coming out, or whatever. And I kind of laugh about it, so that I'm kind of educating people, while I'm also honoring the fact that I'm wired differently in whatever the regard is.
Right.
And so I think it's important that we demonstrate it, and we demonstrate how to do that, because people who are wired differently and in the minority of that, I think, need a little bit of extra help.
They do. And we need to come up with ways that we can help people experience that, so that they know going forward what it feels like to empathize. Because it is a feeling, it's an emotion. And if you don't naturally feel it, then somehow or another, we have to help them learn.
Right. And then what about the people who, well, first of all, empathy and sympathy are two separate things.
Yes.
But what about the people who have squishy boundaries and they over empathize?
Yeah, that's another problem.
They go off the chart on the other side.
Yeah, that's another problem. Empathy is, I get it. I understand where you are. Let's move forward. How can I help you do that? Empathy is not going down the path with that person.
Commiserating.
Yeah, that's not a healthy place to be. And that's definitely not what we're talking about. But it is, people do that because they feel like the need to fix. Right. And that's really about them. It's not about the person that they're wanting to fix. It's almost just an insecurity, I think, that they have, that they feel like the need to fix other people, and they don't necessarily focus on themselves. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, so there's so many different levels and nuances here. We could go on forever, and we're probably going to keep going on well past this time that we're choosing to record our conversation. But it's very interesting. It's all very interesting.
Oh yeah, people are interesting. Human behavior is interesting.
Yeah, we are interesting creatures.
Yeah.
And so the moral of the story, for us choosing to even record any of this conversation, is that everybody's unique and cool and different. And when we learn our emotional intelligence, especially if we have ADHD or another kind of neurodiverse situation going on, a difference that is not in the norm,
right?
Then it takes a little bit more help and a little bit more education and a whole lot more support.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
And
but it can be done. And the cool thing is, emotional intelligence is one of those things that continues to grow throughout your lifetime if you choose to let that happen. And it really is about choosing that.
It's the conscious choice to say, I want to be more whole in a lot of really powerful ways.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's really cool. All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we turn this off?
No, I'm just very happy to be here with you today in my living room. I love it.
I know. This is so fun because when I moved away from Florida 3 years ago, end of March, 3 years ago, Carol said, and I said, well, let's just keep meeting every week on Zoom. We're gonna meet every week, and we're still gonna keep our friendship really powerful. And other than a handful of times when one of us was traveling, mostly Carol because she goes to far off lands, but when one of us is traveling, sometimes we don't get to meet. But most of the time,
we do.
For the last 3 years, we haven't hardly missed a Monday of meeting, and I think that commitment to our friendship pays off.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, you're so lucky you have good friends." I said, "Well, it's a big investment, and we have to learn how to give to each other and take from each other and be there for each other and cry and laugh all together." So now I get to hang out in Carol's living room with her and on her porch having coffee this morning with my wonderful puppy who's moved in, and we're having a great time. So I suggest that after listening to this podcast, you go seek somebody who's really important to you and go share some ideas with them and allow your quirkiness and your uniqueness and your way you think to come alive by interacting with another person.
Absolutely.
Because ADHD people need that body double, so we say, right? That extra person around. So go do that and let me know how it goes.
And have a great day.
Alrighty, so remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star and you're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. And so go out there, grow your emotional intelligence, love your quirky self, and know that you are loved beyond measure. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, we're saying adios.
Are you tired of searching for someone to understand you? Join our Facebook group, Someone Gets Me. In this group, you will be able to connect with others who are intense, sensitive, smart, and talented. I share my insights and teachings, and you can connect with others in a real, authentic, safe forum. So join us today. Someone Gets Me.